Wow, have we had a busy week. So a couple things happened since, oh my goodness, probably 2 episodes ago. We managed to cram in not just our very first live event, all about craft beer at Hard Rock 42, which was episode 27. But the weekend before that, we also managed to have our bridal couples join us for brunch at Milestones here in Sudbury and chatted about weddings. Not just because it was Valentine's Day or anything else, but I think that I've always wanted to do a wedding episode, even related to culinary tourism or food, wine, and travel, because food and drink and travel all play a pretty big role in a couple's special day. And I think there's a lot of stress about it, and it's probably the largest dollar amount or percentage of the budget in every wedding budget. And I thought it really warranted some details and behind the scenes things. And since I used to own a catering company, and Stacy's a travel agent, and Deke's done catering and food stuff, and Cynthia was and still is one of Sudbury's best wedding planners, we all have our own experience to things, and we all have our own thoughts of how things should go from a vendor's perspective. So we thought we had a lot of information that we wanted to share. So here's how it went. So if you missed it earlier, probably about 2 weeks prior to that Milestones brunch, we had a little Facebook contest out there. And all the winners had to do was basically send us a message letting us know when their wedding date was and what question they had for our resident experts. And the winners got to come and join us at Milestones for a Sunday brunch for some Q&A and mimosas, of course. So I also sat down with our Flavor Crew member and resident wedding planner at the end of last year for a little one-on-one dinner just to chat about all things weddings. As much as we both were in the industry for many years, because we both worked them in different capacities, we kind of didn't cross paths as often as we thought we would have. So this was kind of a great time to sort of share some notes and find out what worked and what didn't. And you'll find out very quickly we don't always agree on what the best answers are. So what I did was I took the highlights of both discussions, so from the brunch and then from my dinner with Cynthia, and I combined them into one big all-inclusive episode. So it's going to be longer than most, but there's a lot of information to get through. Everything to do from catering, the bar service, wines, your late night buffet, just about everything having to do with food and drink. So there's going to be a lot of notes. So you might want to grab a pen for this. And then as we go through it, just keep in mind that I've also included the full audio of my dinner with Cynthia that has a lot of other tips according to what we think is important having to do with budget, etc. So there's so much that I can share with you, but in the meantime, grab a mimosa and grab your pen. And here's our wedding show.
Okay, we haven't picked out our food yet. We're having a hard time. Do we go with just chicken? Do we do the 2 meats, or is that too much for somebody? Like, I hate going to a wedding and wasting the food. But how do you please everyone? Because we can only choose one for the
one meat.
One meat, yeah, one dish.
What I would do, I would choose the one meat that you think is going to be the most popular for the entree. I'm assuming it sounds like you're doing plated?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other meats or the other protein, so if you're going to go chicken, right, I would put beef, making it show up either in your late night offerings or have it showing up in your appetizers. Right? So do like the first course or the appetizers, or if you want to have, this way if they don't eat beef, they'll still have other options, and they'll eat the chicken or vice versa, right? And you're probably still going to have a couple that, aren't eating meat at all. Right? So, and most caterers are okay with the vegetarian option here and there as long as they know in advance.
Right.
But I think that's the only thing is if you want to incorporate it. And honestly, as much as people may be vocal about their choices ahead of time when you're chatting with them, once they get to that wedding day, they really don't care as long as it tastes good.
So I have another perspective on that.
Wow,
First question.
Whoops, that's it. Yeah.
No, because you mentioned that the duo plate was an option.
Yes.
The duo of chicken and beef.
And beef, yeah.
And one of the things I like about that option is because it does give them both. And you mentioned you were worried about waste.
Yeah.
My experience is that when we have choices, because a lot of our couples have like the chicken or beef choice, inevitably we see one partner chooses the chicken and the other partner chooses the beef. So that also gives them the option that if they want to like
share.
swap it over.
But are you at? But is that an option? Where are you getting?
It is.
So,
Yeah,
but
so
I
you
meant
get, like,
that.
a small
Is it an
portion
option that everyone has chicken or everyone has beef, or can some people choose something ahead of time?
It's
No,
like
it
they
comes on a
serve
plate.
chicken and beef on the same plate. I love it. It's one of my favorites. Look at her, she's all grossed out. I know.
You can't see this, but I'm making a stinky face, and it's only because I just
From a
sorry,
palate?
the chef side of me
Yeah,
is
right.
having a difficult time marrying that on a plate so it looks good, tastes good, right? The beef gravy getting in with the chicken. That's the only thing that kind of it wouldn't be
That's
my
fair.
favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
So I understand it. What I would say is that if they're saying that as long as they know how many chicken, how many beef in advance, that's where I would say no to. I never liked the pre-orders because nobody ever remembers what they ordered. Never do. And when they get there, even if they remember, they change their mind when they see someone else's plate.
So, from a planning perspective on that, because that's something that we deal with all the time, and the reality is the bulk of my couples want to give their guests the choice. They're like, they're my guests, I want them to choose. I don't want everyone to be stuck with what I'm a big fan of give everyone the same thing, like you say, because it's just easier. Everyone will eat it 90% of the time, and again, you're getting a free meal. When someone comes to your home for dinner, do they come and you go, okay, do you want the chicken or the beef? You're cooking a roast chicken, you're cooking a roast beef, and that's what they're getting. But the vast majority of my couples want that choice for their guests. So it's about making it super clear and easy for the caterer so that they're not going, oh my God, do I have to have X amount? Or you tell them, this is table 8. Table 8 has 4 chicken and 4 beef. Table 9 has 3 chicken and 5 beef. I can't math this morning. It's Sunday morning and I haven't had a mimosa yet. But then also what you're doing is you're doing a place card. And your place card, you're making it super clear on each place card because then they don't go, oh no, I actually ordered the beef. It's like your place card says chicken.
Chicken.
You're getting chicken, and it is what
3
it
months
is.
ago you decided.
Exactly.
But be prepared. It still happens. And one of those things is that on that day, you don't want to be racing back to the kitchen or dealing with the, okay, I know. So, because as an example, one of the weddings that I did where they had a choice of the vegetarian option, the chicken or the beef. Right? I had it all ready to go in the back, and I always have extra servings of each. Most caterers do. The difference was, so I had, originally, it was 2 guys at the head table had ordered the beef, and the rest had all ordered chicken. As my servers were coming back to get the plates, because we always serve the head table first, everyone chose beef. So that started the entire dinner service
But I guess
with
when it-
everybody choosing something different, and I was like, oh my gosh. So then I was panicking, and then I also had 2 people showing up that crashed. They said no, they weren't even coming to the wedding. We were pulling in chairs at the last minute trying to feed people.
I feel there's a certain amount of onus on the server, and if the server can't do it, then I'm bringing someone out to say, I appreciate that today you want beef, but you pre-ordered chicken, you're getting chicken. And as a planner, I'm usually the bad guy because I'll kind of go, yeah, I could totally get it. I'm sure it looks really, really good. I'm the first one to go out and say, this is what you ordered, this is what we've got prepared for you, and maybe use your fork on somebody else's steak, so to speak. But I see from a catering perspective where it's a pain because, again, having done it and having gone, okay, they've just given that entire head table beef, I completely see it. But there are things you can put into place to make sure that it does go smoothly.
Anyways, if you do come up with an option of how to put chicken and a beef on a plate that looks pretty, please let me know.
Well, we've decided to rethink offer beef or salmon. Do you think that's too risky, as chicken would be safer? Or we love salmon, and a lot of people around us do, but
You'd be surprised. Again, you're doing a choice too. Man.
To be honest, it's always choices, and beef has been massive the last couple of years in our
Beef is
guest
back.
lists. I always plan assuming it's going to be more chicken, and I've been messed up the last year. I've given up. No, I don't assume that.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority, we're back onto beef.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we just get to that point where we made a lot of jokes about rubbery hotel chicken. That people don't want rubbery hotel chicken anymore, so they're choosing the beef because it tends to be, even if beef is overdone, at least it's still got some flavor to it. But we're seeing more and more of people going for a fish option as opposed to one of the other options.
And I like it. So even if someone is a vegetarian, sometimes they're
still
actually a
have
pescatarian, so
Yeah.
the fish would be a better option.
We do have a
And there's
vegetarian
a
option as well.
Oh wow, you have vegetarian and the fish, but it's surprising.
Yeah.
I've actually I remember I catered a couple of weddings where fish was
Yeah.
one of their, like they did family style wedding. I did 2 weddings in the same summer, and fish was
Yeah.
one of their features,
Yeah,
and I
not as
loved
risky
it.
as
And
you
it
would think.
was,
Not like it was.
and it
Yeah.
was well received as long as the fish is cooked well.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right, so it's not overcooked or anything like
Yeah,
that.
and we did the tasting, and it was
Yeah, that's
delicious.
fantastic.
Yeah. Oh well, then yeah, I think that's.
I say go for
We'll
it.
I
see
like
what
it
the
better than
guests
I
choose,
like it
but at
better
least
than chicken, because my thought is it's a special occasion. Everyone
Yeah.
makes chicken at home, which is
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
reasons I really. This is awful of me to say that. I rarely order chicken on a restaurant
Me neither.
for the same reason,
Yeah.
right? Everyone eats chicken all the time, so why would you go out and have chicken again? So having something like salmon or having beef or whatever, I
Yeah.
think that.
Okay.
Yeah, good call. So people don't realize when we're getting married, and this is going back to the catering thing, and this is just because we were talking about caterers. When you order a menu for a wedding, you need to ask a number of questions in advance. So, what is included with the price per person? Don't just assume saying, okay, well, it includes the serving staff, it's a plate of dinner, whatever else. It doesn't mean the staff's going to be there all night.
Doesn't mean they're going to clear the plates.
It doesn't mean that they are there to help cut your cake, cut and serve your cake at the end of the night. Doesn't mean that they're going to be there to help serve your pizza that you ordered for your late night thing. Doesn't mean that they're going to be there to take out the garbage. Even if they are there, that's probably not their job.
Yeah.
They may not, and little things. If you want them to be clearing alcohol and helping out with the bar when things are, you got to specify, are they going to be Smart Serve certified and they are the right age? There's all these things that people just assume, like they're going to a restaurant, right? They're going to pay this much per person, and everything's just going to fall into place.
Don't forget rentals like plates and tableware and glassware
And tablecloths.
and disposables later on.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that even I've got some caterers who actually have you order the chafing dishes and the serving utensils as well. So
Yes.
check with your caterer to make sure that they have all of that. And if they don't, you need to get a list from them because that's going to add to the cost. Food-wise, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get away from the chicken and beef mentality. I mean, we do live in a community that is very chicken or beef. Every time I start with clients and we start to deviate from that and I get a little bit excited about food, they come back to, oh, but my family wants chicken or beef. But they're being more creative, at least, with their chicken.
Well, that's
options.
a start. That's a start.
Exactly. So that at least is exciting. We're not getting your typical what we call, wedding chicken with the
White cream sauce.
with the steamed. Or no, lately it's been roasted red pepper sauce, which doesn't really
that's-
taste like red pepper, so it's more like tomato soup on chicken.
Okay.
But I mean, that said, we've had some great stuffed chickens, not like the chicken Kievs that are frozen.
Sorry, I'm just betting you that roasted red pepper sauce is actually the soup. You know that everyone's doing a roasted red pepper soup, which has got a half
I'm
tomato
sure
base in it?
that's what it is.
Huh. Okay, sorry.
So, but I mean, I had a client who did, she did chicken parmesan, and she did a beef tenderloin with mushrooms, and it was amazing. Like
Yeah.
that food. Now, interestingly enough, it's a hotel that had a restaurant attached to it.
Okay.
And the restaurant was doing the catering, and you could tell by the creativity in the food and the fact that the chicken parmesan had a fettuccine with it, and the beef tenderloin had a garlic mash with it. So they really, it was a better meal because it was more, I guess, more restaurant-y, for lack of a.
Well, it's not the standard, yes, where you do chicken, beef, or fish, and everyone gets the same size.
Everyone gets
regardless.
the same roasted potatoes and the steamed broccoli, cauliflower, and
Yeah.
carrots.
The California mix.
Yes. Which is okay if it's oven roasted and you get some flavor to
as
it.
opposed to the big frozen freezer bags.
But as opposed to the freezer bags that are steamed or boiled, they're not so awesome. So in that regard, at least they're being more choosy about the actual food that's going on the plate versus just doing what I joke about as being hotel chicken and hotel prime rib.
I hate prime rib. I used to vent. Oh my God. And it's not because the thing that most bridal couples always seem to forget, actually anyone who ever ordered prime rib for a large group, is that You have so many different people with different tastes on how they like their beef, and the amount of prime rib that you have to go through to make sure that everyone's got their medium rare or what they think is medium well or whatever, you end up with a lot of waste. So if you're in a hotel where they're always doing prime rib stuff and they can have a use for the extra cuts that aren't getting used, that's different. When I was catering, it was off-site, or if anyone's going to be planning a wedding and they're planning to do it off-site, so going to their cottage or in a backyard weddings or any place that doesn't actually have its own staff or its own catering facility, you're kind of making a custom menu, and you're paying for all the food for the full amount was brought. And it didn't matter. I mean, I would get rave reviews to the people who loved it rare, and then the people who liked theirs cooked more, they're like, well, what do you mean you can't just go and cook it more?
Yeah.
Because I don't have a kitchen here.
Well, and they don't. I mean, with a plated meal as well, when you've got 150 to 300 people in a room, it's not like each person's going to get to choose how it's done.
No, and
you're going to get whatever plate they put in front of you.
That's what everybody wants. And so I've been successful over the last couple of years that I was doing big weddings, that I was kind of talking them out of it, saying I'd rather them do beef tenderloin individual portions where I can control the size, the weight of it, and I can actually make them all to medium rare.
Do them all to a medium-ish.
You do medium to medium rare, and then if some of them have to be cooked a little bit longer, it's easier to cook it more than not enough, right?
Yeah.
So you have a little more flexibility.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Anyways, that was just my little vent about prime rib.
And that's the thing, and I think we've talked about the last time when we were talking about things, and I said that the venues, I think, have to step it up in what they're offering to clients as well, because couples don't always come in knowing this, right? They're not all working with a wedding planner with a background in hospitality. They're not, they may not be foodies per se, so they're really looking to the venue and the caterer to provide that guidance. And if they're still only offering plain chicken with roasted red pepper soup on top, or
they have for the past 10 years,
exactly, then the couple isn't going to may not necessarily know any better. It's the more discerning clients, or the ones who work with a wedding planner like me, who's like, okay, please don't serve us crappy chicken and whatever.
And that's the whole thing, and especially if you're going to a wedding in your own community and you start to know the same halls and the same food places. When you see that your event that you're going to is at a certain place, when you start to be able to guess the menu before you get there, that's that they've basically been stuck on the same thing every time, right?
Exactly.
And it's predictable for the people who like predictability. The ones who don't want any change, they want to know that, oh, that's where the wedding is, that means I'm having this, right? So it's good.
Speaking of cake, we're kind of splurging on the meal and the bar, so we're thinking to cut costs of not having a cake. And there's a dessert, of course, included with the meal. Thank you. So
not to discount our Stacy, who's a cake baker. Our other co-host is a cake baker. Okay. But we're seeing a lot more of that. And when I'm working with clients, we talk a lot about budget and budget priorities, and I think there's some discussion in here as well. And if you're doing a cake, and the cake is really important to you, do your big, elaborate, beautiful cake, but negotiate with your vendor to not have dessert. Because to serve a dessert and to serve a cake, something's not going to get eaten. Yeah. The tradition of the wedding cake dates back, there's a couple of reasons it was used. One is it became the favor as well, too, because they were made into these like fruit cakes. They're full of rum and basically fossilized fruit. In them, and so then the nonas the night before would be wrapping up all the little pieces, and they'd be on the tables, and so that was one kind of purpose of the cake. But the cutting of the cake is actually the first domestic task you do together as a couple at your wedding. So if you can imagine, all the strong women are like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
Hashtag me too.
Right? So as soon as I bring that up, and interestingly enough too, if you look at the traditional way it's supposed to be held, the woman's hand is on the bottom and the man's hand is on the top. And the feminist in me like screams. Yes. So obviously with a lot of couples cohabiting, that really isn't a thing anymore. No. So that's the tradition around it, and that's where that cutting of the cake comes from. So many of my couples are ready to like throw, that's one of those traditions that they're like stomping on as they're planning their wedding, and they refuse to do it. So it's a pretty picture. Cakes are wonderful and beautiful, and if you like cake, go for the wedding cake. I'm not here to say don't do it. But if it's not a priority for you and you can take that $500 to $800 and put it elsewhere, it's not a bad thing. A lot of couples who still want to do that cutting will just bring a small 6-inch cake in. I have actually had a couple cut a steak because they don't eat cake. And they're like, we don't like cake, we don't want to do cake. And she looked right at me, she's like, if I'm going to cut something, I'm cutting a freaking steak. And I said, well, why not? So we had a beautiful prime rib steak cooked just to their liking. They had bought they basically bought steak, like cutting, serving boards and knives, and so they cut their steak with their steak knives and they fed it to each other. So this is also a couple that had their bride and groom had like the unicorn head and the horse head. I don't even know the significance of it. So they were a lot of fun and a little bit, anti-tradition. Actually, he took her name too. Like it was really different, really cool couple. But that stuck with me. That my husband said exactly the same thing.
No.
I offered. I said to my husband, I said, "Why don't we both hyphenate?" He's like, "Yeah, no.
You can keep your name, but I'm not taking it.
Yeah, he was the same way. So, but it's that idea of, again, it's your day.
Yeah.
And so that's where, that's where the tradition comes from, but feel free to throw it in there too.
I have another option.
Yeah.
Do a cheesecake.
Yeah.
Like
we've
the
talked about
cheese,
that.
like not a cheesecake, but a cake made of cheese. Yeah.
Even if it's a
love
small one, you put
cheesecake.
put a cool ribbon around it, and it can be a centerpiece where if you're going to do appetizers or snacks before or after, you can get like a
be
thing of
great at late
as a late
The
night option or
brie
whatever.
reel,
That
the
with some
cheddar.
fruit and other kind of things,
Yeah.
and
Herbs and
because you can put flowers on top and it kind of looks like a cake. Close enough.
yeah.
Because really, I don't know how many weddings I've been to, and nobody ever eats that cake.
I have thrown out so much wedding cake, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
I made my own wedding cakes, and I was giving away cake in boxes to people as they were leaving. Like, please take cakes.
Yeah.
As opposed to the big tower, I had all individual cakes. Right? So they had all these different flavors to
It was
choose
so
from.
pretty, no one wanted to touch them.
No, it was a New Year's Eve reception. Everyone was in drinking mode. Nobody wanted to eat my mama.
That's something else
mama
too,
cake.
because a lot of people say, well, I want to get the wedding cake and serve it at late night. But if you think about your friends and family and when they've had a few drinks, who craves cake?
Yeah, you want something salty.
Yeah, you want carbs, you want salty, you want
Ooh,
greasy.
funeral sandwiches.
Or funeral sandwiches. Oh my God, don't get me started on the funeral sandwiches.
I love those.
Reminder, the next time Stephanie comes to
Doesn't
ours
matter
and
how
has
classy
drinks, have the
things
funeral
are.
sandwiches
Late night
ready.
egg salad. That's right up my alley. Buffet or plated?
Sorry, chewing.
This wouldn't be a food themed show if we weren't eating and drinking.
My clients trend towards plated. A lot of that push comes from me.
Good.
The reason I push it is the last thing I want to see is women in beautiful long gowns, big kind of accessories and hair and whatever, slopping around with a plate of food, or having to line up for food. Don't get me wrong, I love a good buffet. I love the selection. If I'm going with my family, with my husband who likes to eat a lot, buffet is where it's at. But when it comes to weddings, that's one opportunity to sit down and have a nice meal delivered to you, unless you're doing a market kind of style wedding, which is a completely different.
Like stations. Well, if there's a theme behind it,
Yeah.
and it makes sense.
Yeah. But a buffet for buffet's sake, it used to be the cheapest option, so people often were going for the buffet because it was cheaper. And I think the caterers and restaurants have figured out that it costs a lot more to do a buffet, so they're now charging accordingly. And when I explain to people, it doesn't cost any more to have your meal served to you, they're more interested in it.
And I think that's the whole thing. They think that they're spoiling their guests more by having these massive buffets of food, but they also don't realize that you're paying for sometimes double the amount of food because the caterer on the other side has to budget because people waste. Oh my God.
So much.
So much food. I mean, after so many years of catering to people and giving them, like even 3 courses, when people are moaning and groaning at the end, but then I see those same people at another event and they're at a buffet, the amount of food that's left over on their plates and stuff,
It's gross.
It's because they want to take everything.
Yeah.
So it's not really spoiling them anymore.
Well, no, it's first of all, it's making them line up for their meal, which makes me crazy. that whole, who's going to get to the buffet line next, what game are we playing to get people up to the buffet. And again, fun in certain circumstances, just for me, not at a wedding. So, but even the food that you're getting, buffet food tends to sit a little bit longer.
Yep.
If you happen to get there when it's the bottom of the chafing dish, you're getting the bottom of the chafing dish instead of a fresh, nice meal for every person.
Mm-hmm. And take it one step further. If you're at a place where there's no kitchen and they're not baking or heating it to fill and to replace those chafers at the time, you end up with just stuff that's been sitting in a warmer for another hour or two.
Yeah.
And that's why you end up with like 3 stations full of potatoes or whatever, because health unit requires you're only allowed to be keeping those things warmed for a period of time. So we have to put out everything all at once. Mm-hmm. And then nothing looks messier. It's the buffet's twice as long as it needs to be. And it's a lot of the same dishes on either side.
Yeah.
And it you end up with 3 dishes of, I used to laugh at the ones that had like a pasta that had a protein in it.
Yeah.
Or I would do almost like we had a New Orleans type theme thing once, so there was like a rice with shrimp and everything else. Mm-hmm. Well, everyone kept picking up the shrimp, so I ended up with like
all
3
the rice left
I had
over
3
or
pans
pasta
of like
left
just
over.
rice at the bottom.
Yeah, so I mean, it's about setting. The thing is with a wedding, and certainly that way I think in restaurants as well. But with a wedding, it's about putting on a show and creating an experience for your guests. So you have to think about what kind of experience you want to create for your guests. Do you want to create an experience where they're all lining up for their food and yapping with the guy from shoving at elbows and let them drop the fork, they got to go back? Or do you want an elegant, feeling of being spoiled? When you're hosting I host people in my home. Sure, we do buffet on the counter every once in a while when we do Thanksgiving or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think of that when I'm thinking about, again, a celebration. And I think the other thing as well too, if you're looking to offer that variety and letting them kind of choose what they want, family style is still a real option. A lot of venues don't like it. I know a lot of caterers don't like it.
Coming from the food side of it, I hate family style.
But from a guest perspective, it's still a nicer way to have a few more choices around the table as opposed to having to line up for your food.
It is a compromise, so you're getting away with not having to do the lineup thing, and yes, you're getting served. However, pricing wise, it is still the same as a buffet. As long as people realize that, because I've actually seen people empty the platter onto their own single plate, and then not even save any. The plate doesn't even get around to anybody else. There's been a lot of that kind of thing over the years, and unless you happen to have sufficient backstock waiting to go, or especially when certain things were basically cooked a la minute at the last minute, it's always been a bit of a dance. No, it's always been a bit of a dance. So as much as I like the idea of family style, as long as people realize it's not going to be cheaper. You had a question also about the candy bars.
Are they passé? Are they
So you would know.
still
They are
fun? Or
not passé. They are still crazy hot.
Thank you.
What a lot of people are doing is really making sure they're personal to them. Some people may not do candy. They might do popcorn instead, or they might do a combination of them. I've had some do full chocolate buffets, which are a little bit pricier but super fun, but definitely not passé. At the end of the day, a lot of people are using it as a replacement to their favor, because favors are becoming a little bit less in vogue, which for me I hate, because it's like my favorite part is like the little goodie, because I like all the freebie bag things. That's my favorite. So I'm like, where's my favorite? But it's an alternative to it that you can do that people can take as little or as much as they want. Something to keep in mind when you're doing a candy buffet is that it's not meant to be an all-you-can-eat feast for people, and this is for guests as well too. It's not an all-you-can-eat feast, because people will go, and I've seen them like shoveling it in multiple bags in their pockets, and I'm going, dude, like, come
filling
on,
purses.
it's like a little treat. So you do the smaller little bags. Don't do big bags, because they will stuff them to the nth degree. But no, I think it's still fun. I don't see it. I mean, we joke a lot because Sudbury's behind the times sometimes, but we're still seeing them in the larger cities as well. That the idea of the little treat, and then again, it's a way to personalize it. You do your own favorites if you want, or you do the colors to match your
Yes,
theme.
that's what I was going to suggest. I
Love
think
a
that'd be fun.
color-themed one. Or we'll do things like rustic-themed ones for a rustic-themed wedding, or do like glammy, glitzy ones for more glamorous weddings. So There's one thing you can just junk table and bowls. Yeah. You can junk candy and bowls on a table. And that's one thing. But I think if you step it up to the next level with the nicer candy jars and you have your work with your decorator to make it pretty and fit in, then it's still very in vogue on this stage. So
And it's easy to find those little small bags that are colored, and you can even personalize them ahead of time. I've done that where
them or ribbons.
or you put little personal notes, like put sweet, right? Little kind of cute things on it. It just makes it a little bit more fun. Or you can leave the little markers and stuff out, and people kind of personalize their own,
Color their own
put
bag.
their name on their bag, kind of things. So you can make, so you can make a lot of fun, and you can really go towards a theme. So I'm just thinking, it's not to do with the wedding, but I'm working with a charity event coming up, and our theme is Willy Wonka. So all of our candy that we're doing there is all the old-fashioned stuff, very Wonka-ish, bright colors, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of ways that you can kind of tie that into. So it doesn't look like you're just putting out a candy bar to put a candy bar out, right?
We did one too where the groom hated cake, so they didn't do a wedding cake. Instead, they did a pie buffet. So we did literally a table full of different pies, all sliced up in mini pies and tarts, and then we did the candy in and around that as well too. So if you weren't a pie eater, there were still kind of little treats around too. So again, finding ways to incorporate it.
Egg salad sandwiches. My brother's listening. He'll be like cheering me on because.
And I'm trying to imagine my clients. So for your late night, I'm thinking egg salad, tuna salad, and ham salad. They'll be like, "You're fired."
You can lean them towards. I said my versions are nicer. Actually, that's what I'll do at the end of this episode. I'll actually put my links to my versions of them. So now that I'm not catering anymore, I don't have to divulge my secrets. But yes, I'll do my egg salad, tuna salad, and chicken salad, so that your people aren't going to be. They don't have to be bad. It's all a matter of what you're using, how you're making them, and everything else.
And I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, though, like talking about what your vision is, what is for you, makes you excited. That's what couples need to do with their late night, because they tend to really kind of kowtow to whoever the grown-ups are. I can say grown-ups because I'm not a grown-up. My parents are the grown-ups. And do the chicken and beef for dinner because that's what's expected. Late night is a chance to break out of what's expected of you and embrace your inner foodie.
That's exactly it. One of our favorite weddings that I remember talking to Alex and Brie about in an earlier podcast. I don't even know if that part aired or not, but we were talking about the favorite events, and they were talking about this one wedding, and it was like this 5-6 course family style, like it was almost like a tasting menu type of thing.
Wow.
It was a beautiful menu, and then they had steamed hot dogs for their late night.
I love it.
Like old fashioned, hot dogs in the like little rotisserie up on the table, and they just all we had I don't know how many different toppings, and watching the people racing off the dance floor, and the DJ announced like hot dogs were ready, and it was woo.
Hot dog bar is my new favorite go-to for parties. Ooh. It's fun and easy, and everyone gets excited about it.
Yeah, so it was fun, and you can actually rent those hot dog steamers at a rental company. So we had the steamers and we steamed the buns and everything else and warmed the buns on the top. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it was nice because everything was so formal for the first part of the night, and then just to go that detour of doing I think that's fun. Of course, on the other hand, I have told a lot of clients, those who don't have wedding planners, they tend to used to rely on me to be their pseudo wedding planner, and I used to tell a lot of them, especially when budget was an issue, late night you never know how many people are going to be there. So to prepay for a specific amount of people, you're guessing.
Yeah.
And you know your crowd better than other people do, but you always have to basically guess less than what's actually going to be, because people surprise you. Either they're still full from dinner, or they maybe have less food than you anticipated, or they end up having to leave early for whatever reason. So it's one of the things that either you're going to guess, and I usually say almost at the most 2/3.
Our rule of thumb is half.
Yep. And that for the late night, and then or I'd say, you know what, or wait and do a head count near the certain time, and then just order pizza.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of great pizza places that are not the standard pizza places.
As long as your venue will let you bring it in.
Yeah, and most of them have been okay with it. I know that I was okay when I was doing offsite stuff, as long as I knew in advance. That means I didn't have to keep staff on to the end of the night, or if they wanted to hire one of my staff to stay back and help clear, or just I used to pay people to open the boxes and put them out on the table or whatever. That was fine, as long as I know in advance.
We have one venue in town that allows it, other than the city-owned spaces. But we're talking about hotels and function halls, that kind of thing. There's one.
Really?
Yeah.
So even hotels won't say.
No, definitely not.
That's too bad.
Yeah. No, definitely not.
Okay. Well, see, I know. See, I always did off-site stuff.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. So don't get me wrong, though, but when I've got clients in that space, we have a lot of fun with it. Like one year, they wanted, her favorite was McDonald's, and his favorite was our Golden Arch here in Sudbury Deluxe.
The Battle of the Arches.
We did a table full of, and we had so much food. We spent like $300, so it wasn't a lot of money. And we had like a mountain of Big Mac combos and a mountain of chicken dinners with fries and sauce.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was, they had
chicken on a
so much food left, but it was so good. Like their guests went wild for it. I was like packing up boxes to send home with their guests. They were so excited.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, $300 is cheap for a late night.
It is. And when you think about.
And they had so much food.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So getting to do that, finding what you're kind of gets you excited about food, or gets you excited about, sometimes it's taking you back to the bar days if they're a few years ago or whatever. What was your late night craving, and go with it. I love an edible favor. I mean, I think that
I do
anytime
too.
I talk to my clients about favors and they're leaning towards, oh, nobody likes those things, I'm like, but everybody loves edibles.
Correct.
And
as opposed to the candle holder that sits in your drawer.
The candle holder or the wine opener, which, I mean, some of us can use more than others.
Yep.
But, they're usually, I mean, you want to make sure you stay away from nuts, because that's kind of one of the big allergies when you're dealing with candy and that kind of stuff. But I don't think they're gone away. I think that the favor itself is kind of starting to go away, and then that's where
the candy
buffet and the
it's taking the place of the favor.
Yeah.
So there's no little favor at the place settings anymore.
Exactly. So if they're doing a candy buffet or a popcorn buffet, they're usually doing it in lieu of a favor, and they've got little bags and say, thank you for joining us or whatever, and they fill their bags out.
Oh yeah, I like that better anyways.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're sitting there stressing about what to get that everyone's going to like or everyone's going to use.
And you're not wrapping 300 little things of tulle around jars and...
Oh my God, I think about how many different little wrapping things that I used to do for friends of mine over the years. I think I had 3 or 4... I think I was a bridesmaid 3 or 4 times. 3 or 4 times in the...
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please pour us more wine.
No problem.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks.
Did you want some more bread, ladies? Did you get some bread?
Oh, we did not see
We did not get bread.
All right.
Well, thank you.
I like this boy.
I'm not even going to edit that part out. Our priorities. He refilled our glass and he's bringing us bread.
Cougars on the loose.
Woohoo! Okay, so we talked, so the food buffet, well, that's the whole thing about the favors thing, is that I know it used to be a lot of work and there was a lot of tradition behind it, and I always get sad about the lack of the tradition. I remember wasn't for my wedding, but I remember a couple of my cousins when they got married, it was my grandmother made, I guess it was the groom's cake.
Yes.
So the fruit cake.
Yeah.
So she made the fruit cake and she had it all cut into little like finger-sized things, and I used to wrap it. My cousins and I would gather around the kitchen table, and one of us would wrap it in saran wrap, and then the other person would put a doily, with a ribbon. Yes.
Yeah.
But we actually had some fun. We'd spend a whole day doing that, and it was a lot of fun. So those kind of traditions, I feel like they're going. And now that I'm older, I would actually eat that cake.
I will never, ever eat that cake, ever. I think the challenge behind it is it becomes, that's a lost art. There is no aunt or nona or grandma who is making that fruit cake anymore. So the idea of actually going and paying to have it done and then wrapping it is just not in the realm of people's thinking anymore. And I agree. That was a huge thing when I was growing up. That and the confetti, the almonds. No, the almonds are steeped in tradition. I actually did a wedding this past spring, and I'm so unprepared. But there's 5 almonds, and they all stand for something. It's like wealth and fertility. And
okay.
There's 5 of them, and I'll send you whatever the 5 is, so you can post it. But so that again is where the almonds came from, because we used to do that as well. We'd have the cake, and then we'd have the little bundle of almonds.
And the almonds were in the tulle.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
And so what's happened now is favors have replaced those things. They also used to have the matchboxes with people's names engraved on them. So all of those things that people were not excited about, because there were very few people who actually liked to eat those almonds, and not a lot liked to eat the fruitcake. So what couples are doing, but why they move more towards favors, is they moved away from those things that people were just throwing out at the end of the night. And we're trying to come up with something that was more useful. And like you said, the challenge is what's useful to the couple may not be as useful to their guests. My last wedding this year did these super cute little votive holder / shot glasses.
Okay.
And they filled them with Jelly Bellies.
Oh, that's cute.
Super cute. And I'd say about 3/4 of them were taken. But, the other quarter were just opened up. People ate the Jelly Bellies and left the glasses. Well, they paid a pretty penny for those glasses, so I was a little bit sad about it. But I get it. I get it from both sides. As a guest, I love having a little favor. But I'm a hoarder. I like all these cute little things, and they get me excited. And as a host, I like the idea of providing something that reflects my personality, the theme of the day, as a keepsake for people. Yep. So I'm a big fan of it, but I also understand why some of my clients are moving away from it. So,
well, it might be because if budgets are an issue, something's got to go.
Yeah.
Right? And something like a candy or popcorn buffet, especially if it's a candy buffet, you could buy a lot of candy and then you could replace the stuff what's eaten with things that are less expensive, and whatever's left over doesn't go to waste.
Exactly. And what I've done on my candy buffets as well is I'll put some big items as well too, say marshmallows. Take up a lot of space and they're super cheap. Or you do popcorn as well, do like a caramel popcorn on your candy buffet as well, so that again, it's not all the, as soon as you start getting to all the pick and mix and color coordinated stuff, that's where it gets really expensive. Yep. But if you find ways to kind of complement those smaller ones with bigger items that will fill jars a little bit easier and fill those bags a little bit easier. That's another tip as well. Don't use the big, huge popcorn bags for your candy buffet, because then people are taking home $10 worth of candy per person.
Oh, that's crazy.
Just give them a little box or a little vessel that they can just bring it home in.
You can get all kinds of little cups, even at the dollar store. There's all kinds of little things for that. That's cool.
So I guess it depends on the crowd and your guests, but we know that 2 bottles of wine per table of 8 is not enough. Is there a magic number? What do you suggest? How many bottles of wine?
Oh, I have so much to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. Should we prepare for?
If you know you have guests, if you know you have a little more wine drinkers, I know for myself, for myself and some of my friends, if I'm starting to drink wine at dinner, I will be continuing to drink wine the rest of the night. So I would make sure there's more wine available than regular standard bar wheel.
Yeah.
However, with the exception, you may get 1 or 2 or something. But I never liked I always do the ratio. It depends on the season. So yes, 1 white, 1 red is fine. If I find that if it's say between fall and spring, people tend to drink more red than white. So I'd always have backup reds. Right? So it almost not quite a 2/3 to 1/3 ratio. But the white's one of those things that people say they like white wine to start off with, and you'll get a handful of people that might have a second glass afterwards, but most of them switch to red.
Yeah. So
for your dinner, because you're having salmon and beef, right? You're having one or the other. Rarely is someone probably going to jump to red wine with their salmon, but they may have it either with their dessert course or afterwards. So I would kind of play it based on, sounds awful, but because you're giving people a choice of the salmon or
see what
that,
order.
And then I would still order more red.
Yeah.
It's more of that. Yeah. And then when it comes to number of bottles, I would caution on the side of having 3 bottles per table for the 8 people. So 1 bottle for every 3 people maybe. Sounds like a lot, but you can actually return the wine that's not open.
I'd rather have more
as opposed to the bottle of gin or something else. There's something unique that you're opening at the bar that you can't return when it's open. A case of wine can be returned afterwards. So always err on the more wine is better, and then I'll deal with the extras. And not to mention little things. I know many bartenders that will be happy with a tip of a bottle of wine.
Oh.
Right? So last minute little thank yous, and you happen to have a couple of bottles of wine stashed away, by all means, I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Enjoy this. You worked hard tonight. They're little thank yous that aren't a lot, and it's not cash oriented, but
yeah. Okay. I do.
Okay.
More wine.
Yes.
Okay, here's my take.
Okay.
It's actually not far off of what Stephanie said. A couple of things to keep in mind. So budget's important because some people are super budget tight. And we think about what the purpose of serving alcohol at our weddings is. Is it that we are here to make sure everyone gets hammered on us? Or are we here to make sure they have a nice tipple with their meal as they're going forward with the day. And as soon as some guest lists hear bottomless bottles of wine, they're filling their water glass, their wine glass, and everything around because they're planning to use the wine for the rest of the evening. So it depends on your crowd. That said, if we think about 2 bottles of wine for a table of 8, you're easily getting 2 glasses of wine per person, which is a reasonable amount typically to have with most meals that we're having in our Sudbury area service, right? So, if you're having a 5-course meal, it might not be enough. Obviously, if you're having like a 3-course meal with soup or salad, main course, and dessert, the 2 glasses may be okay. Now, if your budget allows, I like the idea of budgeting for 3. Personally, and then you keep that third one aside, and then you have.
Oh, I was never going to put the third bottle on
but
the table.
I have. There's a venue in town that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we already talked about. Yes, I know.
Yeah. So have that third bottle aside, and like you say, judge based on your guest list, the time of the year, and the food that you're serving, whether those extra ones are going to be red or those extra ones are going to be white. I'm a big fan of have an extra of each, so to speak, so that you still have enough and return the rest. But I think that if you're concerned that 2 isn't going to be enough based on your guest list, that 3 is a pretty comfortable one. Okay. And have a conversation with the service staff around if you're having the bottles on the table to make sure that the bottles are being rotated. In that, let's say our table here today is having all white wine, but the table next to us is having all red, and they've started with a red and a white. Make sure the service staff is doing that swap. Now, in some areas, they don't like that swapping because it's tacky or inappropriate looking. But as a planner, I also err on the side of my client not paying for bottles that have been opened and not consumed.
Yeah.
So in that regard, having that awareness around that.
Cover your plates hot.
Perfect.
Yeah, if you talk about those scenarios with your venue
So that they're
about the
prepared
alcohol
before.
service.
I can take it away.
And a lot of times too, your planner or your coordinator will watch that for you as well too. I know our team certainly will get up and start swapping bottles around to make sure everyone's got enough.
Because guests will do it on their own.
They will.
I've seen them getting up and stealing bottles off of other tables.
Trade
are you
trade you the red for the white?
Are you going to drink that? Right?
It is what it is.
I've
folks.
never done that. What did you see, food and wine wise specifically? What did you see as the big trends this year? Now that your big season's finished.
This past year, interestingly, there's been a big swing towards and away again from homemade wine, where everyone comes to the table going, we're going to do our homemade wine. We talked to the wine place. Just blanked out, sorry guys.
No.
And we're all excited, and then they get more into planning and they start to learn about the hidden fees and the things they don't think about when you're bottling your own wine, like licensing and insurance and corkage fees. And then they're coming back to, well, what is the venue now offering for wines as opposed to bringing their own? But then when they're looking at those wines, they're not trending towards the house wine always anymore. That's a big thing I'm noticing, especially with kind of the younger millennial hipster.
Now, why
True.
is that?
Why are they not?
Because they think house wine's beneath them?
No, I think in our experience, especially in the venues here that we're working with, a lot of them are using lower quality wines as their house wines.
Oh, okay.
Wines that, like when I worked in hospitality, we used to use it for cooking only.
Okay, so they're choosing. So some
They're
of the venues
choosing a
here,
better wine.
They're choosing wines here at the venues based on price point, not that they're always going to be good by the glass.
It's not even about price point per se, because they're still budget conscious. Wedding clients are always going to be budget conscious and aware of where every dollar is going, but they're recognizing that just having the cheapest bottle of wine off the shelf is not necessarily the best.
Okay.
Not saying that there aren't great, affordable wines as well, but they're choosing to choose other wines other than what the base kind of host wine is at the venue.
So what's the standard right now for? I don't want to say to open versus cash bar. We can get in a whole other episode just between those two things. But are they doing a cocktail hour before and then wine at dinner and then cocktails afterwards? Or are they doing more of a hodgepodge where everything's just by the glass? Are they even still doing wine on the tables or just having the bar open?
It's still pretty consistent with the cocktail hour. Wine on the tables during dinner. Some couples are choosing to keep the bar open during dinner for those who don't drink wine, and then your typical kind of free for all after dinner.
Yeah, free for all. That's fun. Are they, for the bar setup though, are they having a very extensive selection, or are they really narrowing it down? Because you can't please everybody.
And I think that's something that I do a lot of advising with my clients on, because they do want to please everyone. But what I am finding is, again, compared to when I was in catering 4 years ago, standard bar rail was acceptable by everyone. Your rye, rum, vodka, gin, scotch, and none of them were high-end.
Correct.
What I'm seeing more of is people are asking, well, what gin do you carry? Well, what whiskey are you carrying? Oh, well, do you have that? Do you have this instead? So they're starting to actually be a little bit pickier about what brands are on the bar, and they're willing to pay a little bit more to have the brands they like.
Well, that's good. Okay, so they're just doing that standard rail. Are they doing any signature cocktails, or are they just doing this open standard?
We had a couple of years with signature cocktails, where signature cocktails were huge. I'm still a fan of them, especially if you've got a budget, only because it limits what you're spending during your cocktail hour. That said, I haven't seen any of them at all this year, actually.
I used to always comment or suggest to them that if you want to keep your bar costs down, do a signature cocktail,
Beer and wine,
and basically leave it that way. If you want to later at night, open it up and bring extra things, or do some liqueurs after dinner, like they can have in their coffee or on the side, then you can have a few extra bottles, but it doesn't need to be this massive, because you're never going to please everybody of what they have.
We are in Canada, and all bars must have Caesars.
No, I have managed to convince out of them,
impressive.
and it's because I know it's a Canadian thing. However, if they know a lot of their friends have Caesars, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if the couple themselves aren't Caesar drinkers, it's one of those things that even people, since Caesars are contagious, it's like a Tim Hortons coffee thing. As soon as they see one person having one, everybody wants a Caesar. And nothing holds up your bar service more than having to do these complicated drinks, and Caesars are not ready-made to be done properly. So there ends up being, and especially the well-trained bartenders, like they know how to properly make a Caesar, and there's a procedure to it, and there's certain steps.
I agree.
And so you want to, if you get a bad Caesar, people will complain about it all night long. So you have to make that call.
I feel if you're doing Caesars, you need to have an extra bartender.
You do, but it's not cheap to have an extra bartender, and you almost have to have a Caesar station, right? Like keep those people away from the other ones who just want a glass of wine. Coming from the girl who's always standing in line behind someone who's got the long order, and all I want is a glass of red. It happens to me even at corporate events. It's just I'm the easiest person. Oh, that's another little tip. So I need to do it at corporate events and stuff too, and I've advised other corporations that I've consulted for that if you're going to have, it's going to be a free-for-all in your bars and you want to get your bar service going faster, if you're only having one white and one red, anyways, pre-pour your glasses, please. Have another of 4 or 5. Have one at a certain station where it's just wine pickup. Someone can come in and grab a glass on their way in, greet your guests with a red or a white. This way they're not taking up time at the bar.
I've suggested that with signature cocktails as well.
Yep.
Have them pre-done, in jugs.
And it actually looks, especially if you're greeting the guests as they're coming in.
Exactly.
That will basically speed things up for all the ones who want to go and get their Rye and Coke with a splash of this at the bar.
Yeah.
The ones who just wanted a glass of white wine, you're already greeting them like somebody's got trays or a table set up with stuff that's pre-poured, ready to go. Yes, right. It's not only smart and efficient, but you also get an idea of right away. A good bartenders will be able to notice how many are wine drinkers, what are cocktail drinkers, or whatever else, and they can gauge their night accordingly.
One thing I've noticed too with bars over the last 2 seasons is a resurgence in gin drinkers.
Yay to us,
right? I remember when I was doing, when I was stocking bars, when I was catering, one bottle of gin might last me an entire season. Whereas every event I go to, they're running out of gin. It's like caterers haven't caught up to the fact that gin is so huge right now.
Well, it is, and I think it's partly because there's wine producers and there's breweries or whatever who are making other things, where they're all starting to distill things on the side. And gin is usually made with roughage, right? It's
Wildflowers.
Traditionally, yeah. So it's herbs and.
So I have the pizza.
Okay, so food's here. So, I mean, we probably could be cutting that last part out. I can edit all this later, but... So what else that we haven't talked about? Candy bars? The drinks thing. So yes, gin's pretty big, but it's how it's made, and I get it. So there's more and more gin that's out there right now, and the classic, the traditional, like cocktails are in
There's
again.
a resurgence of like
There is.
traditional cocktails. So not like the fruity, everything's based on sourpuss cocktails, but like old fashions and whiskey
Oh, my
sours.
sourpuss.
I might be dissing a little
When
bit
I
on
met
sourpuss.
when I met my husband, we used to go and compete for shots.
Yeah, see, anything but sourpuss.
I used to win every time.
Okay,
Anything else?
What about
bar
tipping?
wise, tipping. Oh,
So tipping, I just had just a random question, but say you have a budget, obviously, for your venue, your food, and all that stuff, but would you throw in an extra little tip for any of the staff, anything like that?
so your venue, 98% of the time has a service
built in.
charge built in.
For like DJ,
Before
like
the taxes.
everything.
So with your vendors, there's the rule of thumb is if the vendor is an owner, so like specifically locally, most of your vendors are owners. Like if you're working with your DJ, you're working with your planner, you're working with your decorator, 99% of the time it's an owner. There's no expectation of tipping. Where you're going to see tipping come into play is your service staff. So again, potentially your bartenders. There are some venues here in town where the tip isn't included with the bartenders. You actually come and you tip them on the day, and that's a discussion to have with your venue. But drivers, like your bus drivers, shuttle bus drivers, your limo drivers, they need to be tipped for sure. Those are probably the only real ones that we see. Would be the shuttle bus drivers and the limo drivers. Anyone else that you can think of specifically?
I think it's one of those
like, in
things you
our
kind of
market?
negotiate up until. I know that again.
Your hairdressers?
I never. Even if someone offered to take tips, there was always
Yeah.
gratuities kind of built into my invoicing, anyways,
Yeah.
and I always had it out so that people could see it.
Yeah.
And it was based on the number of staff for the day and bartenders, etc. Sometimes bartenders would get cash tips at the bar. At weddings, though, it's rare. So
If it's a host bar.
but most of the bartenders know that
Yeah.
going in. So that's one of the things, you can't assume that your guests are going to tip the bartenders. They usually don't. People, if it's a host bar, nobody brings cash with them, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of keep that in mind, and that's something you might want to negotiate either with the venue or the caterer ahead of time. But as a caterer, I never took any of the tips, and if someone wanted to loved the service so much and they wanted to save something extra, it always went to the staff. Or if there's something key staff or someone went above and beyond. Like sometimes I've had staff, servers, I've already packed up and I'm gone back to the kitchen, and a couple of the servers have stayed there for an extra hour or two, right? So those kind of situations where you want to tip that. So I mean, leave a little
That's what I was
cushion.
gonna say, like an exceptional circumstance. If someone goes above and beyond, we've certainly seen, in specifically our company, we've had after the wedding a couple email us a gift card. Like one emailed us a gift card for dinner. They're like, thank you so much for going above and beyond. Take your husband out for a date on us. But when it comes to your vendors, the most important way that you can show appreciation is to leave them a positive review.
Yeah.
Whether it's Google, their website, Facebook. To be completely honest, when people come to me to book me, they usually come and say, "Okay, I read all your reviews, and I just need to work
Yeah.
with you." It's so valuable. Like that over like a $20 tip at the end of the day, so to speak, for a vendor, it speaks volumes. So that's super important.
And if
By the
you-
same token, sorry,
No, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were finished.
by the same token, if you struggled with one of your vendors, it goes a lot further to have a conversation with them versus going on and giving them a 1-star review and chewing them out. I mean, that's something else to think about. We've had conversations about restaurants getting poor reviews over things where it'd be so much better to go and speak to a manager on the day and the like.
And you don't always know what's going on in the background. But for tipping, I wouldn't concern yourself over it. And any most experienced vendors aren't expecting. It was a big no-no. No cash changes hands on the wedding day. It used to be a big bother for me. So I kind of arrange things, and I don't know what kind of arrangements you can make. So
You're usually paid. Everything's paid before.
I had a payment type system where the bulk of the invoice was paid prior to the day of the wedding, and then the balance we worry about it later. I just didn't want this big running around with
We have a process with our clients because it's not really typically an issue, but every once in a while there's the odd, like I said, there's one venue where you pay the bartenders in cash here in town, and some entertainment, often bands, when we paid in cash on the day. So what we do with our clients, because we don't want, like, most wedding dresses don't have pockets. The guys have enough going on that they don't want to think about having envelopes. We actually have a sign-off sheet, so the couple puts the cash in the envelope and writes on who it is. We sign off on taking the envelope, and then when we see the vendor, we have the vendor sign off on it. So it's that idea of, you guys don't have to deal with that on your wedding day, so that's why my company takes care of it. But Stephanie's right, the vast majority of your vendors are usually paid a week before. Even your caterer, usually you're paid up to what the quotation is the week before, and then the Monday following, you take care of the balance at that point.
This way it gives you some flexibility, because there's always little last minute things, like a server has to stay a little bit later, or again, there might be extra people that showed up at the last minute.
Bar usage sometimes.
Yeah, there's always like maybe a little tweaks here and there, and this way you're not worrying about it, caterer's not worrying about it, right? It's usually a lot easier to kind of finalize those things ahead of time. So since we kind of already ran through a few things we needed to vent about during this episode, I figure we'll skip the fly in our soup, and we will also skip some industry updates, and we'll save that for the next episode when the whole team is back together again next week for episode 29. So if you are getting married, or if someone you know is getting married, or you're the mother of the bride, or whoever is associated with a couple to be, and any of this information was helpful, please pass it on to anyone else you know who might also be in need of it. These are sometimes things that you wouldn't normally get unless you're going to an actual consultation with someone in the catering, event planning business. So you're actually getting a lot of great information. So please share this episode with them. As well, in the show notes, I've also included some of the checklists that I reference. I mentioned it, I think, not just in this episode, but I also mentioned in that bonus episode that I said it's going to be in the show notes. So they are basically sample proposals and checklists that I used to use in my catering business that I would use when I sat down with clients. This way, you'll have an idea of all of the questions or details that you may be forgetting to ask when you're interviewing vendors going forward, or you're making up your own plans. And actually, a lot of those same things could relate to most event planning things, especially from a caterer's perspective. So hopefully that'll give you some insight. And of course, these show notes are always in the same format. So that's stephaniepichet.ca/flavor and then the episode number. So this is flavor 28. So it is stephaniepichet.ca/flavor 28. Now, if you missed last week's episode, there was also a bonus episode. It's only about 5 minutes long. And for those who are new to podcasts or are not very technologically savvy to be able to figure out how to access these show notes that I keep mentioning every episode, make sure you go to that one episode, look through, if you're listening to it through iTunes or Spotify, look through previous episodes. It'll show up as a bonus episode right along with episode 27 from last week. So it's only about 5 minutes long. It's very simple to follow along, and it basically just tells you about how to copy and paste and what that link is. So when I list a particular link in the show notes that you'll see on your mobile screen or your computer screen, if you're listening to it through iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify, if there's not an active link, which means that you click on it because it's already underlined and it's going to take you to a web page. If there's no underlining and it's not a different color, you're just going to have to highlight that one link that I talk about and copy it and paste it into your browser. So that can be your Safari, it could be your Internet Explorer, it could be your just about anywhere. And you can probably even just put it in Google if you're not sure what kind of browser you're using, and it'll kind of bring it up that way. But in those show notes, that's the entire page for that particular episode. You'll find the built-in player that you can play, and then any other bonus audio or video that's included along with this episode will also be there. Any other particular links like the downloadable checklists that I mentioned are going to be in there. And then as well as you'll have a quick link to the main episode or main Flying for Flavor podcast page where you can access any of the other previous episodes. And now that we have a lot of them, I'm actually archiving them based on certain months. So this way, if I ever reference that there was an episode back in January or something, you'll be able to go back to January and scroll through those. So that's how I'm organizing it going forward. So we're going to have another contest. It was so much fun this time. We're going to do another one probably in the summer. We're kind of thinking maybe just before the fall at some point. So just keep an eye out on our Facebook page for more details. We thought that if we do this twice a year, that'll give us enough opportunity to update you on any trends or anything else having to do with weddings. And this way, if depending on when you get engaged or when your wedding date is, you will always have the most current information. Not to mention, we're always looking for an excuse to go for mimosas and brunch at Milestones. I wanted to thank the couples this week who came out to the brunch. That was a lot of fun for us. And of course, the whole crew at Milestones and our server, Brianna, who were, as always, just completely accommodating and lovely to work with on a Sunday morning, even before we had our coffee and mimosas. So that was really great. And if I didn't get a chance to thank them again publicly, I did a lot personally. But to Dave and the whole crew at Hard Rock 42, along with Rob from Stack Brewing, who helped us out with our live episode last week. We had so much fun that we're already kind of looking for other places to sort of visit and introduce them to our podcast and then introduce our listeners to their businesses. So if you have any kind of cool events coming up and you want us to be on site, feel free to reach out to us at flavor@stephaniepichet.ca. And don't forget, flavor spelled the Canadian way, FLAVOUR. Next week, we're talking about dining and traveling alone. Complete opposite from the whole wedding and couple thing, right? So there's a lot of people, and I have to admit, it's one of those bucket list things of mine. Just haven't quite figured out when to do it. As much as I've been traveling a lot, I have to admit, aside from the quick trip to Toronto, and I think I've done one other flight on my own someplace, Winnipeg, etc. for business, I've never really gone on a vacation on my own. So I admit I'm a little bit nervous, and we're picking Stacey's brain on that. I've got some other tips that I've been kind of researching on. And when it comes to dining alone, I do that so often that I have all kinds of tips out there. If you've always been nervous about being in a strange country or being in a strange city and you just want to go out and have a meal on your own. It's not scary. People don't always stare at you, but some restaurants really cater to solo diners better than others. So I'll kind of teach you what to look for. So make sure to follow us on the Facebook page. Just make sure you put in your Facebook browser, Flying for Flavor, and follow along. So just click on follow so that you can make sure you get all the updates when they happen, including any contests. You can always listen to us, of course, on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. And as always, flyingforflavor.ca. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you next week here on Flying for Flavor.